Thank you for jumping on, everybody. This is Todd Clark. Todd Clark. Um, Name on Instagram is Lunch Made. Just one there. Not Instagram, sorry. Twitter is
And Instagram as well as
and,
Lunch Made.
and Instagram is Lunch Made. Thank you for following me on both. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
So Todd is a collector of sports cards. Everybody knows recently I just jumped into sports cards collecting, but I'm still a novice. So I'm asking people who probably had a little bit more experience in sports card collecting, what their experience has been like, what to expect, what to avoid. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
just bring it on, Mr. Clark. So, Mr. Clark, thank you again. Let's talk about sports cards for a second. Now, for my previous interview, I heard that, not interview, I hate the word interview because that shit sounds like a job. This is not a fucking interview. This is a conversation. So, from my previous conversation about sports cards, um, I pretty much got the tip of sports cards being the hottest they've ever been in the wrestling community. Is that true? If so, how true is it, and how far could it go?
Yeah, well, so I've been collecting pretty much my whole life. And I started collecting really big, like 83, 84. And so that was, I started to go to, Price Club, which is Costco way back then. And we would get boxes of Tops and Fleer and Donruss in the baseball world. And that really started everything for me. And I became a big collector and would love chasing cards. Well, I was also way into wrestling at that time. My mom, she grew up in Southern Illinois, big Vern Gagne fan growing up. And she was really into it. One of her other friends of the family, they would always talk about wrestling. So when wrestling started to kind of catch on in those, 84, I was way into it. And it was something that my parents allowed us to do. We weren't allowed to watch MTV and certain things.
But
So
I got you.
to be able to collect, it's something I fell in love with really early. And I'm a huge baseball guy. I do fantasy sports. Rank players, football and baseball. I'm a huge card collector. It's something that I really only took a break through my college years from like 92 to 98. Other than that, I've been pretty much in it the whole time. For the wrestling side, I collected that first 1985 Tops that came out back in the day. We used to get packs and boxes. And it's funny, my brother and we talked my dad into getting up into the attic this weekend. So this Sunday, we're going to bust out all of our old stuff. And we're pretty sure that we have some cool things in there that we've forgot about. So, but, back in 85, it was, cards like the Hogan.
Ooh, they have a lot of those going on eBay right now for a lot.
Yeah.
Rated
So
PSA.
crazy. So I was collecting cards before all this COVID started. And when COVID started baseball cards started to get too expensive for me to spend in on. I've always been a guy that maybe spent like $50 a card or less. I couldn't see myself putting in $200 a card. It just seemed like, wow, that's crazy. The most I ever spent was $100 on a Mike Schmidt rookie. And that was back in 1999 when I finally got out of college and made my first ends. So to go back and look at some of the cards, I knew I had a bunch of them because all of the pictures just reminded me of collecting. And, every single card that I had, it reminded me of it. So I started to go back in on eBay and I got this for like $2. I got this for like $2 as well. And
when did you get that one? Like when did
in
you
June. I got these in June.
2020.
And then this bad boy's an O-Pee-Chee. So O-Pee-Chee, that's a set. It's I was a big collector of O-Pee-Chee back in the day for baseball because that's the Canadian sets that they have French on the back. So I went in and I'm like, okay, I got to get one of at least each Hogan. And then once I bought everyone, I'm like, should I go get more? Are these really ever going to take off? I didn't.
Are you planning on getting them graded though? Those?
No, I don't think so. They're part of my set. And part of my, my collection. One of them, the card number 16 is like the best of the bunch, with the centering and everything. I could get it, sent in to get it graded, but right now PSA, they're not even grading on the economy level. They just got into like August of last year. So if you send something in now, just economy, you're waiting like a year to get your cards back.
Oh no. Nah.
So to pay those premiums, you know, I have a buddy that does a lot of stuff with Fernando Tatis and sending them in. So it's worth his while to spend like $65 a card to get something graded. Then it comes back in like 3 weeks. So, but everyone, you know, everyone has jumped into collecting on baseball, on football, and basketball. And that's why I think that everyone is starting to switch gears and look at other things. So for me, baseball, I've been collecting all the time. Football, I have, you know, little things. I've always been a Packers fan. So little, you know, I got my Rodgers rookie and my Favre rookie and things, Devontae Adams, you know, I got cards like that. But it got to the point where stuff started getting so expensive. So I started to look in other realms. And that's what immediately I went into the wrestling world, because that's what I knew most. That and Star Wars, you know, things that I grew up really loving. So,
and those I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but Star Wars and wrestling, those have a lot of nostalgia for people outside. They also have Pokemon too. There's another one. They all have great communities behind them.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So I think that definitely helps.
Yeah. And so I was way into WWF. And then once it switched over to WWE, that's when I started to kind of get lost. My brother was always into it, but, you know, I was getting into high school. Chicks didn't really dig the wrestling fans back then. See, now it's different, you know.
Somebody else said, like, the guy said the same thing. The other guy said the same thing, that people weren't liking the wrestling fans back then. They were wondering why men were looking at half-naked guys.
Yeah, for sure. You know? And so it was really cool to get back into it. And I started to look around for things that, you know, I started to do a couple like pack breaks. I have a YouTube channel. It's under Todd Clark. And I was doing some pack breaks from yesteryear. So like old baseball cards. I did some, you know, the 85 tops and the 87 tops, and just cracking those online, because is so much nostalgia with it. And it brings back so many memories of yesteryear. And, you know, I can pick up a card and be like, oh man, I remember that match, you know, and that's super cool. Yeah. But then everything really took off, and I started to see, I think that there was a Hogan that sold for a ridiculous amount of money. And I started to see, wow, how is that happening? And of course it was a PSA, you know, high graded card. But then all the other stuff just started coming with it. You know, all of those Hogans started coming.
Yeah, the Rock's car sold too recently for $45,000.
Yeah, and I think some of them are like sticker cards too. Mm-hmm. You know, like that Rock. I think there was like a 95,000, like some kind of tuna fish Rock football card that was like his first one. You know,
yeah,
and that stuff's just amazing. And so I started getting more into it. And then, you know, I had the stuff that I knew a lot. And then, you know, we ended up signing up for the WWE network because my son started to get into it. And this was last year. And so his guy was Big E.
I got a Big E. I have a Big E PSA 10.
So Big E, yeah, he's awesome. And, you know, I love awesome. His pizzazz. And, you know, it reminded me a lot of, you know, JYD growing up. Mm-hmm. And JYD for me, like, just the way he had a charisma to him, that every time he walked on the stage, you wanted to see what he was. He was different. He was funny. He would do little antics that weren't, you know, the normal type stuff. Yeah. And so started getting back into it, trying to learn, you know, trying to catch up. And it was really hard for me to catch up because so much happened since since the last time, you know, but wrestling, you know, started to get some JYD stuff.
I like that.
Some Hogan is always like, even these cards are starting to take off. You know, yeah. Hitman was big.
From what I've seen, those and what the other guy mentioned, I want to say his name, Rob. His name's Rob. We can all connect. You know what I mean? I just want to make sure that the community knows everybody in the community and where they are.
For sure.
Rob was pretty much saying the same thing, that the market is the hottest it's ever been. He said he's been collecting for 22 years.
Is that Rob England?
Yep. You familiar?
Oh man, absolutely. And I just found him maybe like, I want to say like maybe 3 weeks or a month ago. Mm-hmm. And he's such a nice guy. And that's awesome. I can't wait to see that. And I guess he's kind of he's the Willy Wonka, I would say, of all of this. He's got, you know, I even told him that I like living vicariously through the stuff that he breaks and he shows, because I can't afford those cards. but they're really cool to see. And yeah, it's just really all of the different cards have come back. Like this set has really taken off. And this is the only card I have of it. It's like the wrestling all-stars. Like you
Those
see the Hogan.
that series itself is pretty rare. They have a Ric Flair too. The Ric Flair of that set, it goes for a pretty large amount.
Yeah, and I never, had a PSA card of a wrestling guy. So I mean, this is just a 6.5. But Snuka was the first guy I fell in love with when he was coming off the top rope.
And sometimes that's good enough. And what Rob was saying was that sometimes that even that snooker card that's graded at a 6 could be better than something today that's at a 10, based on just how long ago the card itself was created.
Right.
You know, like what year was that? Like what year is that snooker card? I know that's
it's an 83 snooker.
See, you know what I mean? 83 snooker might be better than a 9 CM Punk. You know what I mean?
Sure. And when I look at it, it's a clean card. The centering's off a little bit, but all those cards, like if you see stuff out that's a 7 or an 8, all that stuff, the way that everything's taken off, those are going to go to.
Yeah. I think mainly
everyone's jumping back in. Go ahead.
Now I was gonna say different, because what I was seeing on eBay is comparing it to basketball and football is that with wrestling, it's not as many of these cards out there. You know what I mean? It's versus like like a LeBron James. It's probably like a lot of LeBron James, even though he's selling for a lot. But it's a lot of his cards online right now. Versus that Jimmy Fly snooker, I probably won't be able to find something as rare as that. You know what I mean? So most of the cards on there are pretty rare.
And a lot of the PSA stuff that you see that is wrestling is getting gobbled up because there's not a lot of PSA stuff. There's a lot of stuff at submission right now, but there's not a lot of stuff getting back into the marketplace.
My biggie is still in the mail, but I do have this, this Randy Orton. You know what I mean? Just PSA 10.
Oh, yeah.
I asked people on my Instagram, will Randy Orton one day be talked about amongst, like the greats like The Rock and Stone Cold? Like, is his name going to be mentioned later on in life? And people were like, yeah. So that kind of led me to buying that.
Hey, my wife even knows his nickname's the Viper. So I mean, when that kind of stuff goes down,
right? Yeah, I mean, if your wife knows a wrestler, then he's got to be somebody.
That's right.
You know what I mean? But so what? Out of all, like, are those the only wrestling cards you collect, or do you have?
Well, I have
please share. Show them and share.
I have like the Impel stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to collect a full Impel set. It was stuff that my brother collected, and so we're looking to put stuff like that together.
Do you collect from a hobby standpoint, or do you collect from an investment standpoint, or both? Or what percentage?
I think mine is more of a collector as a hobby, but because of how everything's taken off, I'm starting to think outside the box a little bit more. So when I pick up cards, instead of picking up one, I'm picking up two. One will be for me, and one I can send off for grading potentially.
I like that.
The one that's not as nice, that will be for my collection. The one that's cleaner, I'll send that one off. I did that recently with like Allen Iverson. I bought 2 Allen Iverson rookies before that all blew up. I got them each for like 20 a pop. Now they're selling for like $80 to $90 a pop.
Yeah. And they probably go for a little bit more. I mean, Allen Iverson, I don't want to.
Oh, AI. Yeah, that's another.
Yeah. Legends are legends, though. And I don't want to go too far off, but,
Sure.
As he progresses or when he becomes deceased, you know what I mean? You can expect that card to be worth a lot. So your son is collecting now. Did you get him? I guess you got him in collecting the same. It's like a revolving door with
Well, I'm trying to turn them on to collecting. I have a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old, and they just don't like it the same way that we did growing up. They've got their devices and everything to hold their attention. And I try to get him in, and, he likes it, but the kids just don't have, and I think that's a problem with the industry big time. For an example, I went to Target just yesterday to try to see if I can find some cards. And I haven't been able to run into cards for quite some time. Now found out that you have to go to the service desk to get them, and then you have to ask, and they only allow me to have one box.
Yeah, they're expensive, and the people know it.
Yep, and that's it's the whole world of flipping now. Everyone sees money that's involved with all these things, and that's why people are venturing. Like today I heard that people are even looking at like Impel Disney cards, and that was from like 1990. Huh?
Yes, a whole bunch of rare
These are the
shit.
things I cut up. I make like, I'm a card artist too. So I took
Let
like
me
an
see.
85 Brutus the Barber beefcake and gave it my own spin.
So wait a minute, let's talk about that because car art is
Sure.
something that I wanted to make my own cars because right now I'm doing canvases. I have canvases
Yeah.
that I'm currently doing. I wanted to start there, but I want to kind of segue into other things. And that car art is something that I think will be valuable because I see that people are actually doing pretty well with car art by adding their
Sure.
own thing to it. Let me see that one more time. Can you bring that back up?
Yeah. So
Let me see that. Ooh, so you added the background.
yeah, I added the background and then gave it a different border,
Mm.
so just cleaned it up a little bit,
So
gave it some new colors.
I like that. So you took the original card and you added your own spin. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason why
And it's funny because the time that I cut it up was like 4 months ago. Now I don't know if I'd cut up that Brutus the Barber.
yeah, for real, man, the way things are picking up. But the reason why I started to collect them is one from an investment standpoint, financially, but also an investment standpoint from just watching. Uh, just it's just gonna help me watch it more. Like I just feel like wrestling as a kid, it was fun, really fun back then. But now you have to add things on top of it to make sure you keep your interest high. And I think
Sure.
collecting these cards and watching it from like a prospect standpoint, like this Randy Orton card, like he's a legend, but his career isn't over. He might get into things after, just to keep my
Right.
brain active and sharp and watching it in that way. So I think from that standpoint of investing, it helps me a lot um, as well. So, and I
And
wanted to meet
I
up with
have so
y'all.
much like junk wax and everything. That's how I got into card art is I have like boxes and boxes of old cards that really aren't worth anything. But you can take them, the first card art that I ever made was a drawing of Hogan. So, this thing's going to always be next to me because it's the first one that I ever made. But, start doing some pencil stuff, and that card, if you're familiar, I think I even actually have it's right here. So that's,
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Georgie Animal Steel.
I like that.
So I started doing that kind of stuff. And then it kind of rotated into actually cutting up like, you know, this bad boy here.
That's nice.
So it's fun. I actually have been doing that for different charities. I'm with some guys right now. There's like 30 artists that are doing something for Alzheimer's. And we've raised over $4,000 so far for a charity. And it's amazing. Thank you. It means so much to me that people actually appreciate my art and will spend some money to donate to a charity. Everyone's pretty much been affected by Alzheimer's one way or another through friends or family or whatnot. And it's just great that, when you have a bunch of guys coming together and helping others out through cards. So that's fantastic. And I look to do more wrestling stuff as well.
No, definitely. Yeah. And I definitely want to make sure I'm watching that too. And we share in that experience. So do you, aside from card collecting, because you just segue into a whole nother lane, wrestling art. So do you draw? Do you paint? Do you what else do you do in relation to wrestling aside from collecting sports cards? Do you do anything else? I mean, I see that you draw.
Yeah, I draw and I use an X-Acto blade all the time now. I actually was a sculpture major at Arizona State University and I was in mixed media and I actually just saw what you put together and that's like exactly what I do, man. And when you took the bud can and put it there with the broken glass. That? Yeah, I just checked it out. And that's exactly what, that's mixed media and you're taking stuff and incorporating it all together. So that's what I went to school for. And I graduated 98. I haven't been doing anything with it. So the biggest benefit from COVID for me was getting into art again and starting to create again and getting into that process. I have not done much out of the 2.5 by 3.5, little palette right now, but I'm looking to get into maybe starting to do some sculpturing again and start messing around with stuff.
The time is honestly now for artists. I think I'm not really speaking from experience. I'm speaking from my own experience, but just from what I see as far as technology goes, and my own experience as far as with my creation of my own artwork, is that the time, it could be a better time for you to be an artist and getting into this type of stuff because the technology that you can add to it to increase your awareness and your talent versus back then where we didn't necessarily have all this stuff.
Right.
You only could share it with like, you know, like the people next door, like, you know, like in your city. And those people really didn't care too much. But now you have people from across the world who would love to see you sculpt a Hulk Hogan, you know what I mean? And probably would pay for it, you know what I mean? So
yeah, things have come a long way.
Keep going on that.
Yeah, thanks. You know, it's like when I graduated, we didn't even have digital phones. So I used to have to take pictures of my sculptures and then make slides. And then I'd keep a little slide pack as my portfolio. So things are so much different these days. And I want to start getting into the digital realm a little bit more, maybe start playing, you know, with Procreate on the iPad and see what I can do.
You see those 3D printers?
Oh, they're crazy. They can do everything.
People print out stuff now. Like people print out all types of stuff, man. But yeah.
What about your art? So what's your background?
So I actually I drew as a kid. You know what I mean? I like drawing as a kid. I like doing art as a kid. When I was younger, I used to write stories too to go along with that. So my mind was always in a creative space as far as artwork. I really didn't have anything I could really channel my artwork into all these years. So I just used to just draw random things. I went to school in middle school, failed art. I was high school, failed art in high school. I'm still pondering how you could really fail art. That was a question that I asked my community. Like, is that even possible? Can you really fail at art? I don't think so. But fast forwarding, my first job was at Michael's Arts and Crafts. I worked there for 5 years, you know, dibbled and dabbled with art there. You know what I mean? So the art was always there. I just never really had anything I could really channel it into, but I added it to the wrestling so I could, you know, like really laser focus in on something that I could really get behind, you know what I mean? And really, and that it could really be appreciated for, you know what I mean? So that's what really had me just jump out there and really showcase my talent. You know what I mean?
Who's your favorite wrestler of all time?
Damn. It's so many.
The switches back to your way.
I know. It's so many, but I gotta say The Rock. I like The Rock. Rock, Steve Austin, those two, because I grew up watching them. The Rock definitely is a great guy. Got Person of the Year last year. Trying to get president. I mean, I don't know if he's trying to get president, but he's definitely going for that superhero role. He's about to be a superhero. We want to see him as a president. X, Y, Z. Like, the guy is phenomenal, man. I like The Rock a lot. So somebody that I would watch.
Him and Hogan are on a different level. You know, those are the masters of the sport, I believe. You know, and we're seeing that with cards as well. Mm-hmm. And those are the guys who are really, you know, commanding those high dollar values.
Yeah, The Rock is like a superhero in real life. Like, that's like, you know, those type of people come by very seldomly, like those type of guys with that type of character. So yeah, his sports car recently sold for $45,000, and I think Deshaun Watson, based on what Rob told me, I think he was the person who bought that sports car. You know what I mean? And I think it all goes to his it just speaks to him as a person. People can get behind him and rally behind him. You know what I mean? And you know, invest in him or with him or around him. You know,
so. Well, I love hearing about when big time people are investing in cards. You know, when you see a Deshaun Watson grabbing cards, when you see Snoop just traded a Cutlass to a DJ for a Kobe card that was, you know, a Kobe rookie. So that happened. You know, DJ Ski is the artist that ended up flipping it with him. He's part of that project 70 that Topps is putting on. But it's just, you know, to see so many people that, you know, we're younger. I have no idea about the stock market. I don't know if I can put in money in the stock market and what happens to where it goes and what happens to it. But with cards, like, yeah, I'm not at the selling mode right now, but at some point in my life, I will become a seller because at that point, they're not going to do anything for me anymore. So, you know, as for me, I live through my cards, and they're a place of that I can be happy and no one can affect me, because it brings me back to being a kiddo again and
like
not
that.
having a care on your mind. And that's one of my biggest things with cards. Cards tell a story. You can pick up a card and it, boom, it triggers your mind of 1,000 different things to talk about. And that's why I think they're so awesome. And I'd love to try to figure out ways to get kids more involved in collecting again, because that's what's to create these things to last a lifetime.
Right.
We like them because there was that stuff when we were growing up. We got into cards and looking at certain things. The kids just need a little bit of a push, and giving like commons to kids, or just figuring out. I used to give packs of cards. I was a coach for many years, so I just give packs of cards to kids just to try to get their involvement back up.
That's what's up.
Yeah, I think it'd be huge for all industries.
Yeah, I think
kids.
Yeah, definitely. I think wrestling is just missing, like, I firmly believe wrestling is missing like 2 or 3 big names, 4 big names, to really start taking the sports car investment part seriously and making it happen. Because there are people who are younger than you and people who are older than me, like they can bridge those gaps. Right. You know what I mean? Who could start getting kids involved in that kind of stuff. So I see it happening. I see it happening. I'm hoping that'll happen. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
We'll see. We'll see how everything goes. But thank you, man. I just wanted to jump on here and meet you and talk to you. I definitely don't want this to be the last conversation. I think as my sports car journey continues, I definitely want to include you in on that. You and
cool.
Rob, you know what I mean? And just maybe we are the ones who bridge that gap and rebuild that community and make it something that could be fun digitally. I did see something though that might help with that whole kiddo thing, is that something Gary Vee said. He was saying that kids are having a hard time collecting sneakers now versus back then. So sports cars is an alternative. So
sure,
it happens in many ways.
Yeah, I remember when British Knights were the jam back on the streets, and I had to, when I got my first pair of British Knights way back in the day, those are hard to come by.
So, I don't even know what that is.
Oh, so British Knights, they were cool shoes that like Run DMC would talk about, and like all the big, like I'm way into hip hop. I love rap. I grew up with rap. And so like those, I remember when I got my first starter jacket and how cool that was. And now the starter jackets are worth so much money and they're like coming back into the scene again. So it's cool to see, everything comes in patterns and history tends to repeat itself. Right. And we're seeing that with cards right now, which is super awesome.
That's dope. Thank you, man. Thank you for everything.
Sure. Thanks for having me. And anytime you want to bounce anything back and forth, I'd love to be able to be a crutch and answer any questions. And that goes for anyone. I love this industry. It's super cool. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Definitely, man. You have a great night, and I'll be in contact with you, man.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Gary. Take care, bud.
Peace.